Guys, welcome to
Okay, so um hopefully you have paused the video and you've gone and watched the video from the previous slide. I'm sorry about it not playing correctly. There's some the three basic insecure attachment styles that Mary Ainsworth established in babies are avoidant, ambivalent, and disorganized. And avoidant babies, they just don't show a lot of emotion. They're kind of like, okay, like they're not, they kind of roll with the punches, but in a oddly detached kind of way. The ambivalent babies are very clingy and they get really upset when they get separated from their caregiver, but when the caregiver comes back, they're mad. Right? These are the babies that are like, no, I'm mad at you because you left. So, this is a result of inconsistent parenting, and these are the parents who are not attuned very well. So these are the ones who are trying to play with babies who are trying to sleep, for example, or who are trying to have a dance party when it's bedtime, like that kind of thing. So disorganized, that's the lack of a clear attachment strategy at all, with the child showing mm, like any attachment strategy that they can think of to try to get their needs met. It's really chaotic. Okay, so in adulthood, right, the avoidant style turns into something called a dismissive avoidant. And these are folks who emotionally distance themselves from others. They're not showing emotions, they're kind of suppressing them. They avoid close relationships so that they maintain their independence. They don't have to like lean on anybody. Those are the dismissive avoidant folks. The ambivalent babies have become anxious, preoccupied adults, and those are folks who really want to have that closeness in childhood. Um, but they're feeling very anxious about it. They're feeling very insecure about their relationships. They're very worried about being abandoned or not being loved enough or not being, loved enough as they love the other person. And so they can be sort of clingy. They can also get really mad. So anxious, preoccupied people um, kind of have a tendency to display these things called protest behaviors. So um, they will show their displeasure about something that their partner has done by, these are the people who will slash tires, right? Like that's an extreme example, but these are those folks, right? And then the disorganized babies map onto the fearful avoidant adult attachment style, and that is a mixed style. So you use a little bit some of the strategies from the dismissive avoidant folks, where you kind of like, you know, um, you keep distance when your feelings are hurt, for example. But if in the beginning of a relationship, when you're really trying to like get somebody to bond to you, you'll be kind of clingy and needy, and show kind of those anxious, preoccupied tendencies. So those are the fearful, avoidant folks. Okay, so you're going to have an opportunity later in this semester to test for your adult attachment style. There's lots of online tests, but we're gonna use a specific one, but you can find one now if you want to do that. But I'm pretty sure that you have some sense of what attachment style you have. And I just want to point out, those are the insecure attachment styles. Like half of the population is secure, more than half, I think. Um, so like they don't show any of those sort of uh, um dysfunctional behaviors. I will say that we all have a primary attachment style as well as a secondary attachment style. So the secondary one, the primary one is the one that we use kind of in day-to-day low stress situations. And then the secondary attachment style is the one that will come out when we're under extreme stress. So just keep that in mind. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that we are neuroplastic, okay? So, even if half of the people in the United States are secure, the other half are not. But that can be changed, right? We can learn new strategies. We don't have to live the same way that we have always lived. We don't have to keep reliving our traumas from childhood. We can reframe our previous experiences and work through them. We are not stuck, right? So this is true for the children in your life. If you're listening to some of these descriptions and you're like, uh-oh, my kid is not secure, like this can be fixed, right? Like these, and for children, it's about kind of changing the interactions that they're having between them and their primary caregiver. So that requires the primary caregiver to make some changes, right? Um, but like the children are even more neuroplastic than adults are. So like this is stuff we can change, guys. Like this is not something you have to just live with. So if you're feeling yourself and some of these, or you go out and you take an adult attachment style test and you think uh-oh, I don't have a secure attachment style. No wonder I have so many problems with my relationships. Like it can be managed. It can be dealt with, right? Like, so here's another recommendation. Thais Gibson. She has lots of books. She has a YouTube channel, which is really helpful. I will say that it is very easy to let your unconscious bias take over when you look at Thais, because she is young and she is beautiful, and it is very easy to not take her seriously as a psychologist. But believe me when I tell you, she is a very serious psychologist, and has a very good sense of people. So do not let your bias take over. It's really important that you don't. So, yeah, I recommend that you go and you find, if you're worried about any of this or thinking it through or want to know more or whatever, I highly recommend that you go find her YouTube channel. Um, Her company is called the Personal Development School, and it is for profit organization. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means, she makes some money from it. But the YouTube channel is free, of course. So like, yeah, I would start there. Okay. So helping strong attachments form. Um, Here's some like just tips about forming good attachments. There is no such thing as being too responsive to a baby or young child. I think we have all heard people say something like, don't pick up that baby, you'll spoil them, or something. That is not a thing. Babies and young children do not have the capacity to self-soothe. Soothing is a learned behavior. We have to learn that by having somebody show it to us. There is something called co-regulation, and that's the part where you use your body and the like sort of your lower blood pressure and your slower heartbeat to bring somebody who is really upset back down, right? And that's what we do with babies. That's why we hold them to us when they're distressed. That's why our natural instinct is to hold them to us. Our instinct is to co-regulate. Okay, so always go to a baby when they cry or in distress. If it's a situation where you can't stay, try to make sure that the person that you're handing them off to will console them. So sleep training is a tricky one, right? Because when you sleep train a baby, you basically leave them to cry for a certain period of time. Um, this is one of those situations where you have to balance your sanity with, like what is optimal for the, brain health of your child. Sleep is just as important, and in many ways much more important than being perfectly responsive to your child. And if your baby is staying up for hours and hours and hours and hours because you haven't sleep trained, that you're doing much more harm to that child than you would be to just like let it happen. So like, you're not going to break your kid either way. And part of the reason why you're not going to break your kid either way is because, you know, parental, or rather caregiver responsiveness is never perfect. It is never a situation where you're always doing the right thing and you're always Johnny on the spot all the time. It doesn't have to be perfect. You do not have to hit a hole in one every single time you swing the club. That's just not life. It's about the majority of our interactions. You need to make sure that you're consistent and warm and responsive, right? You're just not going to be able to be there 100% of the time. Okay. Other tips for helping strong attachments form. Read their signals. If they're sleepy, don't try to play, right? If they're bouncing off the walls, don't try to force them to take a nap. Read their signals, be responsive. The more responsive you are to how they are behaving in any given moment, the more they're going to kind of like feel seen and attached to you properly. Okay. Use an authoritative parenting style. If you don't have those skills, seek a training program. There are lots of training programs out there for your parenting skills. So um it's so critical to parenting and our own self-reflection of how we're parented that next week's homework covers this, even though next week has nothing to do with development. That's what next week is going to do. Okay, so before we finish today, um, we're done, right? But before we finish today, I want to talk about the end of life. So we didn't cover um like adults at all, right? We're just talking about children today. But like there's a lot to adult development as well that is important. But what we don't talk about very often is the end of life. And the end of life process is one that obviously doesn't impact the individual very much, but impacts the people around them a lot. So I just want to put in a plug here in the development lecture for hospice. Okay. So I've been working in hospice as a social worker for, well, since I was pregnant. So like think about think about um the process of starting to work with people who are actively dying when you're pregnant. So it's really interesting experience the way that started. But you know, hospice is designed to, it doesn't speed up a death, but it also doesn't slow a death down. All it does is make folks comfortable at the end of their lives, right? And there are lots of different ways to do that, and there's medications to do that, and there's social work support, and there's spiritual support, and there's, of course, nursing support and doctor support and all of that. But for folks who don't want to die in a hospital setting or don't want a bunch of life-saving measures done, hospice can be a very peaceful way to help people to die in a way that feels okay to the people that they left behind. Nobody's really gonna be like, well, that was a really good death. I don't even know what that means, honestly. But to die in a way where the people who loved that person can walk away and say, you know, I feel like they were peaceful at the end, or as peaceful as they could have been. is really good for their development, is really good for those people who are left behind to move on with their own lives. So I just wanted to put in a plug in there because you have to go back into your chapter and read about adult and senior development, and that's fine. But I just wanted to talk about the very end of life. All right. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I'm here for you, office hours, email, Canvas, whatever it is. I'm happy to answer your questions. All right. Thanks so much. Bye bye.